Whether you're all about homemade or love the convenience of frozen, today I've got 5 mouth-watering meatball recipes that will totally change the way you see this classic. Meatballs are not just for spaghetti anymore. These recipes are perfect for any meal, and trust me, you don't want to miss the last one. Let's get started. We are going to make these meatballs that have this lemony orzo that go with it. Delicious. I'm actually going to be using ground chicken. You can use ground turkey, ground beef, ground whatever it is that you enjoy. We're going to use chicken because that's what I had available. And tonight, actually, my husband is not here, so I'm going a little less on the peppers and stuff just because we're not going to need quite as much. So adjust to whatever it is that you feel like you'll need. Let's just slice these up. This is another example of the style of dinner that is just kind of our preference. The type of flavors, absolutely, that we enjoy, but also we love having the type of dinner like this where there's toppings that you can kind of just choose from. So maybe not everybody in your household likes Kalamata olives, then they can leave those out, but the people that enjoy them can use them. So I'm just gonna slice these. Also, while I do that, my oven is currently preheated to 400 degrees, and I've got a pot over on the stove that has some water in it. I'm starting to get that to boiling so that we'll be able to cook up that orzo. I'm gonna give these just a little bit of a drizzle with oil. Oh, I forgot, I always forget I have my sprayer. And let's put some salt on these and just do one of these numbers, okay? Really, really simple here. And I'm gonna lay these just all over my dish. Okay, set this to the side because we need to make up our meatball mixture. I have 1 pound of ground chicken here, and this is about a ½ cup of breadcrumbs, panko, whatever your preference is. Add all of those. Is that an orzo in there? Yup. Add in about a ½ teaspoon or so of, maybe a little more. It's probably like a teaspoon of minced garlic. 1 egg, already prepped and ready to go. A decent amount of oregano. So at least a teaspoon, maybe more, just depending on the flavors that you really enjoy. But I'm gonna add a good amount, probably closer to 2 teaspoons, but we really like oregano, especially in these kind of like Mediterranean, lemony type of flavors. Love it. Let's add a touch of salt. And I'm gonna be adding some pepper. Not too much. I'm gonna be using my herb scissors to cut up some parsley. So this is fresh parsley. That is definitely my recommendation for this, if you're able to access fresh parsley. Also, let me show you guys a little tip. If you purchase fresh parsley, or maybe you grow some in your garden, that's what I'm actually working on, fresh parsley in my garden right now, because we use it a lot. I keep mine in the refrigerator just like this. So you just take it, add a little bit of water into your cup, chill it just like this in the refrigerator, and then every few days or so I change out the water, and they stay fresh for so long. Obviously, if you're growing parsley or mint or whatever the herb is, if you're growing it, it's probably better to just leave it on the plant. But if you've already cut it, this is a great way to just store it right in the fridge like this. Okay, let's start to mix this together. I'm gonna take my 1½ tablespoon scoop here, and you can obviously roll these around and form them so that they look really perfect. But if you just wanna use your scoop and just scoop them straight onto the pan, you don't even have to do the extra work and effort, unless of course you want them to look beautiful and perfect. Also, I don't think I've shared them with you. I'll try and put them on the screen if I can find them. We bought some pre-made meatballs the other day at Sam's Club because I was looking for a really quick lunch option. So a lot of times I prep our lunches ahead of time. I'll make them for a couple of days at a time, and then that way we can just pull them out of the fridge and reheat. And that's a very common thing in our house, just because I scrounge for lunches, you guys. So if I don't have something made, then I'm just raiding the pantry to try and find something. So I found these pre-made meatballs at Sam's Club, and they are so delicious. But sometimes you just come across a fantastic product, and for sure, that was one of them. Also, I'm a big fan of meatballs. I actually really enjoy them. And I also like the fact that if you make too many, you can freeze them. You can have them for lunch. They usually reheat really well. I like them a lot. So this one's kind of a sheet pan meal. We're just adding some more stuff to it. These are gonna go in that 400-degree preheated oven. I'm gonna check them at around 17 to 18 minutes. I'm thinking they're gonna take 20 to 22, but we'll check them just based on their size. Obviously, all that time depends on the size of the meatballs that you make. So let's get these in there. My apologies, I thought I was recording and I was not. I added 1 1/3 cup of Orzo here into this water, and we're gonna let this cook just until it's al dente. It usually takes under 10 minutes, but we'll watch it just to kind of see how it is. I also had salt in that water too. While the meatballs are cooking, I need to set a timer. Okay, timer's on. While the meatballs are cooking and the Orzo is cooking, I'm gonna make up the feta kind of drizzle that we're using. I have about a 1/2 cup of Greek yogurt here. This is plain, it's non-fat. You can use full fat, it doesn't matter, it's totally fine. And I'm gonna add some feta cheese to this. So I like a lot of feta in ours, but let's say about a 1/2 cup. Let's just start to mix that. Probably could have used a little bit bigger of a bowl. Unfortunately though, this is the this is the most amount that we'll be adding. Add about a tablespoon of oil. This is avocado oil. Use whatever your preference is on that. And I like to stir this ingredient by ingredient, just making sure that consistency stays where I want it, or because then I can see, okay, do I need to add more oil? Should I add more vinegar? What do I need to add to this to kind of get it to be where I want it to be? I'm gonna add a touch of lemon juice. Let's do about 2 teaspoons. I also really like to add red wine vinegar. This is not in some of the recipes that I've seen for this kind of thing, but I think that red wine vinegar just makes this really good. So 1.5 teaspoons-ish. And this is gonna help to kind of thin it out a bit, because the thinner you make it, the easier it is to drizzle. So obviously you can just like plop a spoonful on the top of your bowl and that's totally fine. If you want to make it a drizzle, then you're gonna wanna thin it out a little bit. And you can do that with water too. I'm adding garlic powder. Feel free to use minced garlic, about a 1/2 teaspoon-ish or so. And then actually, let's just go ahead and add our oregano. Love oregano. I'm gonna add at least a teaspoon. And then I really like to add dill to this, even though you don't need it. There's just something about that lemony Greek-ish flavors. I just feel like dill takes it next level. We definitely need some salt, so add a pinch of that. And I'm gonna be adding pepper. Oh, love the smell of that dill. See what our consistency looks like. It's definitely not at a drizzling consistency, but again, if you want it to be thinner, you can add a little bit of water and it's totally fine. Okay, the Orzo is done. Let's drain that. And then we're gonna go back into the pot. Okay, so this is kind of like a lemony Orzo. I'm gonna add a touch of butter. That's even less than a tablespoon. You can add more though. Feel free to add whatever you need. And then I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons, maybe not even, maybe more like 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice. Mix that together and we have our nice lemon Orzo. If you have a fresh lemon, add in some of the, the peel, the rind, you know, when you, oh my goodness, the zest in here, and that's gonna even make it more lemony. I'm gonna add some of the dressing that we made to the center. Obviously, like I said, feel free to thin that out and then you can add that. Let's add some meatballs. I didn't even count how many I made, but I'm thinking like 4 to 5 per bowl is a good amount. And then some peppers. And then I love Kalamata olives.
Just a few for me.
Gotta have some of those. Add a little bit more of this because it's pretty, and top that off with some more parsley, just for some additional bright green. Little insider tip in my house here, whenever we just don't know what we're gonna have for dinner, I often opt for bowls. any type of bowl like this where you can throw in the ingredients that you love. It's easy to make. Everybody can pick what they love out of it. I just love a meal like this. Fantastic flavor. You get some of that lemon, just a little bit. Like I said, add a little bit of zest and it's gonna give more of a pop of lemon, but the meatballs are so well flavored. So, so good. And this right here, that takes it over the top. You definitely don't wanna make this without that sauce because it is delicious. But the meatballs are cooked perfectly. Just for reference, these are 1.5 tablespoon meatballs. I cooked them for 21 minutes. Okay, so just for reference, they're perfectly cooked. If you're not a fan of Orzo, you can make this with rice too, or you can make it in a salad and just put the meatballs and everything on top of a salad. It is appetizer night in our house, and guys, you would think that when I tell my kids that we're having appetizers for dinner, that I am taking them to their all-time favorite restaurant. This is such a big family favorite. I've got my simmer pot over here working. It smells amazing in my house. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure you follow me over on Instagram at Feeding the Birds. And I actually have a reel where I show you how I made our simmer pot, and it just cooks in the crock pot and it smells so delicious. Like my entire house smells amazing. I am prepping this early because appetizer night, because I'm making so many different things, can get a little hectic in the kitchen. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep as much as possible now. The first thing we need to do is make up a chimichurri sauce, and that is because we are going to make chimichurri meatballs. How good does that sound? I love chimichurri. It is absolutely one of my favorite sauces. And I'm actually gonna be making enough meatballs that we're gonna use them in a different recipe as well. So the half of these are gonna be used for this video and half are gonna be used in a different video, because then I have another meatballs recipe that sounds incredible. I have one shallot. I'm gonna cut off the ends and then get the outerness off, the outer layer. And I usually prefer to take off whatever layers taste like paper. Same with an onion, but you guys know we don't use onion a whole lot here. It's pretty rare. My husband, for some reason, doesn't mind shallot though. So whenever I have an opportunity, I will use shallot. We're gonna cut this into wedges. And you can use your food processor if that's what you want to use to make this. I have actually, let me cut this a little smaller. I have my blender cup. We're gonna be using that. Also, this is the perfect night to make this because my parsley is on its last leg here and we need 3/4 of a cup. So we're gonna use quite a bit of this parsley, and I'm not really concerned about breaking it up or anything. I'm going to just snip off the good pieces and go directly into this cup, and I'm gonna get significant amounts of it on the floor while we do that. Okay, I don't know if this is quite 3/4 of a cup, but I think I've cut off the majority of the good looking, saving just a bit in case I need some for another recipe. Now you can throw in some fresh garlic if you want. Just throw in the whole, not the whole bulb, but you know what I mean. Like when you take the clove out, you can throw that in there. We actually don't have any right now. So I'm gonna take what would be about 2 minced garlic cloves and put that in. And unfortunately, I'm out of fresh oregano right now. That's another thing that I feel like I could add to my garden that we would probably use a lot. So we're going to use some dried oregano. I'm gonna, maybe a teaspoon or so. We need about 1.5 teaspoons of salt in here. And then I'm also gonna add some pepper. This is white pepper, but you can use whatever you prefer, about 1/2 teaspoon or so. I mean, if you like it really peppery, then use more. About 3/4 of a cup of oil. This is avocado oil, but feel free to use an olive oil if that's what you're comfortable with, what you normally have on hand. And this is not a new recipe to me, so if you need to measure, please feel free to do that. Because we make this kind of stuff quite a bit, I know exactly the amounts that we need just from looking at how it is in the blender cup. The most underrated kitchen, what would you call this? Addition? I'm not even sure. I love red wine vinegar. It adds the best flavor to things. We're gonna add about 1/4 cup. And about 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Now you can go less on this if you don't want the added spice. It's so good though. Trust me, it's so good. Now the key here is pulsing, a pulse. It's not a constant blend. You want to pulse this and just pull it together. Okay, now if you want this to look less combined, so it looks more olive oil-ish, I don't know the best words to use here. You can actually pulse together the shallot, the garlic, the parsley, the oregano, all of that, then put that into a bowl and mix it with your oil. You can do it whatever way you want. That's gonna look more like a traditional chimichurri. I usually just keep it really easy and mix everything in here because then I can just store it in the refrigerator, especially if I'm making it a day ahead. It's totally up to you, but you're gonna get a more traditional looking chimichurri if you pulse it separately, then add in your oil and your vinegar. In this bowl here, I have 1 pound of sweet Italian sausage and 1 pound of ground beef. You can use ground beef and lamb, you can use ground beef and pork, ground beef and Italian sausage, ground beef and whatever kind of sausage you prefer. Just ground beef, you could do turkey, chicken. I mean, the possibilities are endless. This is just what I am using. I've actually been really loving panko breadcrumbs lately, so that's what we're gonna use. Just a really finely ground Italian breadcrumb is completely fine. So we need about 3/4 of a cup for this. I'm gonna add about 1/3 cup of this chimichurri into the panko, and we're gonna mix that together. Ooh, you can smell that shallot and the garlic. Oh my goodness. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mix together these 2 meats because I need to reserve half of it for another meatball recipe. So I'm gonna mix together that pork and the beef. The easiest way to do this is with your hands, y'all. I mean, I could put it in the KitchenAid mixer and do it that way too, but you're gonna get a decent mix with your hands for sure. I choked on a cup of coffee before starting this video. So between that and the shallots making my eyes water, this is going really well. I'm gonna add in, oh, I almost added 2, but we're cutting this in half. We only need 1 egg. Oh, and you know what? Now that I think about it, I may have mixed too much panko. We'll see how this works. I think it'll be all right because of the type of panko that it is. Okay, we need to mix all of this together, and we might actually need to toss some over the side of the bowl. We might actually need to add a little bit of salt. I usually will just take a scoop and just kind of like lightly roll it because this rolls one side of it, obviously. Lay them on a parchment lined baking sheet. This works so perfect. And this guarantees that they're pretty much all the same size, so you're gonna get the same cook time on each one. I also want to mention that whenever I make meatballs, something I do a lot is go ahead and double the recipe, because for us, meatballs, they're one of those things that you can cook up a bunch of them and then put them in a freezer safe container, and it can be reheated so easily. So on a night when maybe you don't know what you want to have for dinner, you can throw together a spaghetti and meatball so fast. My kids can actually pull those out of the freezer and easily make up a lunch for themselves. All they have to do is reheat the meatballs that have already been cooked. It's one of those things where I highly suggest, if you're gonna make up a meatball mixture anyway, why not go ahead and just double it so that you have it for later on. Our oven will get preheated to 350 degrees. These will bake for 15 minutes. Then you turn on the broil function, and then you broil them for about 5 more minutes, and it's gonna add that crispiness to the top. So good. Let's taste these meatballs, that chimichurri inside of them. I gotta have some more. Those are so packed full of flavor. Wow. Wow. I've never thought to mix chimichurri into a meatball, but that is delicious. You are getting flavor with every single bite. It tastes like you spent all day making them. That is so good. You guys need to make this one for sure. Tonight we're having some Italian meatballs with this herbed ricotta. It's made in the oven. I don't have to stand in front of the stove. We're gonna make everything up and then throw it into the oven. I was just about to get started getting everything out, and I realized that this recipe calls for Parmesan cheese, and I didn't shred it. I have been trying to be better about once I bring something home from the grocery store, going ahead and prepping it and making it ready for whatever situation we're gonna be in. And I didn't do that this time. So to start this recipe, I need to shred up this Parmesan cheese. And you guys know I love using my cheese grater, shredder, whatever you wanna call it. This will be good because I think we actually need Parmesan for a couple of recipes this week. So this way it'll already be done and ready to go. In my mixing bowl here, I have about a pound of ground turkey. You can use ground chicken. You could even use ground beef if you want to. We're going with a ground turkey. This was actually on sale. And so this works perfectly for me today. To my 1 pound of ground turkey, I'm gonna add about a half cup of shredded Parmesan. You can definitely add some diced onions into this if you want to. We're obviously skipping on that. If you're new here, my husband doesn't really care for onions, so we don't use it a lot in recipes, but I'm gonna be adding 1/4 cup of panko into this. You can add a little bit more too, because if you're using ground beef, I wouldn't add more. If you're using ground turkey, maybe even chicken, just depending on the consistency, you might wanna add a little bit more panko just to kind of pull it together. 1 egg. And I started making this recipe and realized that we are out of Italian seasoning. I ordered groceries this morning. It would have been really nice for me to look at that when I ordered groceries, but I didn't. So we're just gonna make our own by adding in all of those Italian seasoning flavors. Overall, if you had Italian seasoning, you'd probably want about a tablespoon. Because I'm not adding onion into ours, I am gonna be adding some onion powder. What's happening here? We'll be adding about a teaspoon. And then I like to add garlic powder into these as well. You can definitely just add minced garlic if you want to. Add a little bit of heat, so I'm adding a touch of cayenne. You can skip this if you don't like heat. You could also add red pepper flakes. That's probably a half teaspoon, maybe even a little bit less. It's really not much at all. Definitely gotta add a pinch of salt. Overall, about a half teaspoon. The Parmesan is a salty cheese, so you are gonna get some salty flavor from that. This is about it for the actual meatball mixture. I'm gonna set this over in my KitchenAid mixer and let it do the work for me. But obviously, if you're not using that, you just wanna stir all this together and create your meatballs. Oh, I also should have mentioned, my oven is preheated to 400 degrees so that when these are done, they can go straight in there. I'm gonna be cooking mine in my cast iron skillet, but you can cook it in any oven safe dish. It doesn't have to be a skillet. Whatever can go in your oven is fine. We've got some marinara made up. You can absolutely just do store-bought marinara. Whenever I usually make this up almost weekly anyway, because my son likes to make little pizzas for his lunches in our little toaster oven. And so we like to have marinara available for that. So I'm just gonna take a good amount here and pour. Polly, you're good. Polly, there must be a delivery. I'm gonna pour some into the bottom of this dish here. Okay, that's good for right now. It's about a 1/4 full. And let's see, I think I made 4 cups. So that was about 1.5 cups that I poured into there. You guys know how much I love my 1.5 tablespoon scoop. That's what we're gonna be using for these meatballs. And I purposely took my rings off before I came down here today. So I'm just scooping and then rolling. You really don't even have to roll that much, but we're gonna just drop them right into that sauce there. Do you guys like meatballs? Is that something that you enjoy? Do you do store-bought? Do you make them yourself? So curious about that. I've been making meatballs for years because when my kids were little, it was such an easy thing to make in bulk and freeze. And then when we'd be home in the middle of the day and they needed their lunch or whatever it was, I mean, we still do it now, but they could just go in and we could grab whatever we needed out of the freezer. They thaw quickly and you heat them up and it's a great lunch option. When they were little, I used to sneak little veggies in I would puree them and sneak veggies into them. Now my kids are actually really good about eating all of their, all the different kinds of food. So I don't have to sneak anything in there. But yeah, just curious. What are y'all's thoughts on meatballs? Are you a fan? Okay, we've got all of the meatballs in there now. I'm gonna take a little bit more sauce. Careful not to touch the meatballs because I want to be able to use this. Just my son to be able to use it for his lunches, like I said. So I wanted extra. So I'm gonna just put some over the tops, making sure we've got a good amount of sauce, a good amount of meatballs. And then we're gonna make up the ricotta. Starting with this whole milk ricotta, and we are going to we're gonna add in 1 cup into this bowl. I'm gonna use about half of the container. I have another recipe this week that calls for ricotta, so I wanna be sure I have enough. I've got some minced garlic here in this container. I'm gonna add about 1 clove or so, about a ½ teaspoon of dried basil, roughly. I'm adding in some thyme, again, about a ½ teaspoon. You guys know how much I love my thyme. And about a ½ teaspoon of oregano, another favorite. Okay, mix all of this together. And you know what? I'm gonna add a little bit more of that freshly grated Parmesan, or freshly shredded Parmesan, I should say. Let's do about a 1/4 cup. Let's do a touch more while we're at it. Okay, mix all of that together now. Now take those meatballs and we're just gonna place dollops of the ricotta all around. There's no rhyme or reason here. We just wanna get ricotta all over, just all over the place because it's so good. Tell me in the comments, are you a ricotta fan or are you not? I know some people think it's kind of strange, you know, the texture. When my kids were younger, I actually used to, each time I would make lasagna, we didn't use ricotta. We would blend cottage cheese with a mozzarella and a Parmesan, and it comes out to a very similar consistency. And if you're really watching your fat content, you can make a pretty healthy version of a lasagna with a low fat or a fat-free cottage cheese. So we did that a lot. This is gonna go into the oven that is preheated. Like I said, it's at 400 degrees, about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, when it comes out, we're gonna top with some fresh basil because it looks so pretty. If you're not a fan of basil, parsley works, thyme works, really anything. I think basil's really pretty. I might add some thyme in there though because we love that so much. Out of the oven, and we've got some noodles over in a pot on the stove. I'm gonna add some thyme. I pulled some off the garden. We have a lot of thyme right now. Cut up some basil. This is purple basil, but it will be just fine. What am I trying to say? Regular basil is totally fine too. I have no brain cells left today, just none. These are turkey meatballs.
Okay.
Ricotta and marinara.
Sage.
Some basil.
Basil.
Yeah. So you want to try that one?
Okay.
Over there? I have noodles over there that we're eating with this.
I like that. What do you call it? The herb flavor that comes through.
Basil and thyme, yeah.
And thyme,
it's an herb ricotta, so yeah, you're probably getting quite a bit of that flavor with the oregano, the thyme, the parsley. We put a lot of different herbs in it, so.
Yeah, in every bite you get that.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I think it's kind of a play on spaghetti, so a little bit more of an elevated version of spaghetti. If you have the time to do this and throw it in the oven versus...
You said time.
If you have the time to do this versus standing in front of the stove and putting everything into a pot, if you want to change it up a little bit, I think this is a great option for something different.
Yeah. And you said spaghetti noodles?
Yeah, just spaghetti noodles. We just kept it simple tonight. But yeah, this is a good one.
That's good.
We're gonna make some garlic butter chicken meatballs. Sounds delicious. I have about a pound of ground chicken here. We're gonna start adding in a few things, just really giving this great flavor. Obviously, you don't have to use chicken. You could use turkey, you could use beef, you could use whatever you normally use to make meatballs, sausage, pork, whatever it is. Like I said, this is a pound. I'm gonna add in about a half cup of cheese. This is a shredded cheddar. We need to add some garlic. So I've got some minced garlic here, about 4 cloves, so it's a decent amount of garlic. So I'm actually gonna go a little less on that. So probably a teaspoon and a half-ish. Some Italian seasoning, go ahead and add that in, right around a teaspoon. Just a touch of crushed red pepper flakes. Now I'm gonna do probably a 1/4 teaspoon, but the more you add of this, the more heat you get. Now I also wanna add in some salt. I'm probably doing around a half teaspoon of this. Now you could add parsley, cilantro, something like that. I don't have either of those, but my favorite is thyme. So I'm gonna add thyme because I know I love that one. That is truly my favorite right now, at least right now, of all of the fresh herbs. And we've got lots of it. We always have lots of it. Add that in. It probably comes out to about a teaspoon and a half, the amount that I'm doing. These can definitely be made in the oven. I would probably cook them for about 20 minutes or so on probably 400. Now I haven't tested that, but that's how I've done meatballs before. So I would assume roughly the same. I'm actually gonna cook these on the stovetop today. So we're just gonna put them in the skillet with a little bit of butter. They're gonna be so delicious. Now, this is a great way to meal prep your lunches, making something like meatballs, because you can portion it out into different containers and then serve it with your whatever your side dishes. All right, let's start to combine this. I'm gonna add a little bit of breadcrumbs, not a lot. I mean, I really want this to not get dry at all. So just a touch of breadcrumbs. I've really been enjoying the panko breadcrumbs lately, so I'm gonna add just a bit of those, maybe only like a 1/4 cup. And then obviously you can add an egg to bind it all together too. I'm not even gonna worry about that, honestly, because you've got that cheese in there, which will help kind of pull it together as well. Like, you can feel free to add whatever kind of spices you like in here. This is kind of the base mixture of what I'm going with. Now, before I head over to the stove to cook this, I'm gonna make up a little sauce that we're gonna end up cooking afterward. I've got some lemon juice here. I'm gonna add the juice of about a half lemon. So just here to this bowl, I'm gonna add in some sriracha, just about a tablespoon. Some chicken broth or bone broth, about a half cup. A touch of garlic, maybe a half teaspoon or so. And then I'm gonna add a little bit more red pepper flakes to this, just a touch here. Why did I put that spoon away? So we're mixing this together. This I'm going to reduce down and kind of create a sauce once we finish making the meatballs. We're gonna head over to the stovetop where we're going to cook these up, and then we'll make the sauce after. All right, these are gonna cook for about 8 to 10 minutes, and we just wanna make sure we brown all sides, getting really good flavor here. All right, these are nice and done. Let's take these off. They're sticking a bit now. Ugh. We're gonna take them off and just set them on a plate. Unfortunately, I think I used a cleaner on this pan that did not serve my pan well because it has been sticking a lot more lately. My trick for when that happens is to just deglaze the pan with a little bit of water with that heat still on, and it will help everything come up really easily. Now, if it had just been a little bit, I would have left it in there and made the sauce with it, but that was a lot of residue there. Let's add in about a tablespoon of butter. Add in that sauce that we made, and we'll let that reduce. I have all of my little containers prepped back here, but I put a little bit in a bowl so that I could try it. It looks amazing and it smells amazing. All right, the flavor is on point. There's some heat, but the lemon really cuts the heat from that sauce. The lemon that is in that sauce cuts the heat. These are really good. So much flavor in these. Definitely like these. There is some kick there though. So if you want to cut down on the amount of heat, I would say less red pepper flakes and maybe even less sriracha or hot sauce, whatever it is that you end up going with. So good, guys. So good. Also thought it would be a good idea to hydrate before starting this video, and then water all down the front of me. So welcome to the circus, always. Tonight we are having appetizer night, which you guys know is absolutely one of my favorite nights. I love having different things that we can choose from. My family loves appetizer night. The first thing that we need to do is get started on the meatballs. Now, I am gonna be making my meatballs from scratch, but please feel free to just buy pre-made meatballs. That is completely okay. But what I'm gonna do is make a whole batch of meatballs, and then I'm gonna have leftovers, or somebody told me the other day, don't call them leftovers, they said planned overs, which sounds better, totally agree. I'm gonna have planned overs for lunches. I'm telling you, if you hear random noises, the dishwasher had to be run. Normally I will try and wait until after I film, but it was one of those scenarios it absolutely had to be done. And the dishwasher is right here. So I apologize if you hear random noises, that's what it is. Also, my dog desperately wants to be outside playing, but some of the neighborhood kids are afraid of dogs. So I keep her in when she's over, so she's acting like a maniac. She has a bell that she rings when she wants to go outside, and she is ringing the bell nonstop. We are going to make turkey meatballs, and part of the reason is that I forgot to take out 2 packages of ground beef, but I had thawed turkey that I actually bought in my grocery order today. So we're gonna make turkey meatballs. I think it's gonna be delicious. You could use ground turkey, ground chicken. This is 1 pound. I actually was thinking I was gonna make less, but I'm gonna go ahead and make the full pound, like I said, and we'll have planned overs. Now, whenever I make meatballs, you guys know I usually make them from scratch, and it's not a specific recipe that I stick to. There's not a specific amount, but I will do my best to kind of tell you and walk you through that. So we're gonna add probably around a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs. And when I make this with chicken or turkey, whenever I make meatballs, it's more of a wet consistency. So I do add, sometimes I will end up going back in and adding a little bit more breadcrumbs. So we'll see how that goes. I am gonna add 1 egg. Instead of salt, I'm gonna add this Kevin's all-purpose seasoning. We have been loving this seasoning lately. It's so good. So I'm probably gonna add maybe a 1/2 teaspoon or so just to give it some flavor. And then I love adding Italian seasoning to meatballs. And I just restocked my Italian seasoning today. I had been out. All right, so we've got that. Now let's just mix this together. Feel free to use your hands if you would like. Jewelry's coming off. Don't let me forget, I have my ring right there. Like I said, tonight we're having an appetizer night, which means I'm making a bunch of different things. I'm not gonna make full recipes of all of this because there's 4 of us. Typically these appetizers will feed like 10 to 12 people or so, and I'm just not interested in having all of that at my table and then having leftovers for days and days. So we're gonna be cutting some of these recipes down. I'm going to foil line this baking sheet. I'm using foil because we're out of parchment paper. All right, let's give this pan, what did I do? Okay, folded all that up. Let's give this pan a spray. Typically when I make meatballs, I will use my 1.5 tablespoon scoop, just scoop them up and then roll them kind of into a ball. They're kind of already in that shape. But this is probably one of my most used kitchen utensils actually, just because we use it for so many different things. So love this one. But I feel like it does make the perfect size meatball. As I'm doing this, absolutely feel like you can use pre-made meatballs. You can buy a bag of frozen meatballs at your local grocery store, and you don't even have to thaw them, and you can make the whole rest of this recipe, okay? I'm just choosing to make mine. I love the flavors that I use in mine. My family loves them. I've been making them for forever and ever. And I forgot to preheat my oven, so we're gonna have to do that now. I'm gonna cook these on 400 for probably 20 minutes or so. I usually just watch them. I'm gonna go ahead and mix together all of the ingredients that we need for the meatballs. So it's kind of a sauce that's going on the meatballs. So we are gonna do a mixture of a couple of different hot sauces. Feel free to just use like a Frank's hot sauce or something like that if that's what you want. We need about a half cup of hot sauce. So I'm gonna use a mixture of Cholula because this one is almost out. We do have another one, so I'll save the other one for my husband. And then I'm gonna add in some of this truff hot sauce. Now we love this truff hot sauce, but I wanna say I do think that if you used all truff for this recipe, it might be a little much in the flavors, just because the other flavors that we're adding to this are gonna be really intense. So you're gonna have a blue cheese crumble and ranch and stuff like that. So I feel like that would be a bit too much. All right, let's add in some ranch seasoning. I did make my own, but you would just wanna add in like a packet or whatever. So you need a tablespoon of ranch seasoning. And we're gonna add a couple tablespoons of butter. This will simmer over on the stovetop, and once everything is mixed together and simmered nicely, we're gonna toss the meatballs that we made in this mixture. My sauce is cooked through. All I did was heat it. Now we're gonna add some of these meatballs in and toss them in that sauce. I actually think I'm gonna end up adding all of the meatballs in because I think we have enough sauce, which is awesome. I'm just gonna let this sit over here on the stovetop until we're ready, just so that they don't get too cold or anything. The heat is on very low, and then right before we're ready to serve, we'll add what we need to the top. Making sure that I get all that sauce, because that is the liquid gold. I just made up a little mixture of sour cream, a little bit of milk, and some of that ranch powder. We're just gonna drizzle on the top like this. You can make it a lot prettier than this, I'm sure. But yes, please. Take some blue cheese and just crumble over the top. Obviously, you could buy one that is already crumbled, and that's gonna make this even faster and easier. And then only really for the purpose of color. Like, are you guys excited about this one? Because I feel excited about this one. Oh my goodness. This is going in a best of. I'm not even kidding. I wish I had made triple the amount. This is so good. In my opinion, it's not too spicy. It's a little bit spicy. You do get a little bit of heat, but the mixture of flavors is phenomenal in this one. I'm trying to think now, what else can I do with these seasonings? Is very good. Our verse today comes from 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new, I'd love if you would subscribe and stick around. Hit that red subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be notified whenever I launch a new video. Don't miss what I have coming up. I'm telling you, I have some great videos planned. I'm so excited about what's coming up next. I hope you have a great week.